The factory floor of Bronson Manufacturing stretched into a darkness that the flickering overhead fluorescence couldn't quite defeat. I was on the overnight shift again, the only soul in the assembly sector, running diagnostics on the old Hydra press. My name's Leo, and I've been fixing things here for 15 years. Tonight, I was fixing boredom. That's when I found it. It was in a spare parts bin, a bin I'd rummaged through 1,000 times, but tonight, nestled among standard steel grommets, those little metal rings we used to reinforce holes in the heavy-duty tarps, was one that was different. It was a grommet, but wrong. The metal wasn't steel, it was a dull, brassy color that seemed to swallow the light. The shape was subtly off. Not a perfect circle, but an ellipse that made my eyes ache if I stared too long. And it was cold. Colder than the room, colder than the steel table. It felt like holding a sliver of winter. Weird, I muttered, tossing it into my toolbox. A curiosity, probably a rejected cast from the foundry. I got back to work. The first strange thing happened an hour later. I went to sip my coffee and found it full of tiny, swirling vortices, like miniature whirlpools. I blinked, and they were gone. I chalked it up to exhaustion. The second thing was the sound. A low metallic hum, not from the machinery, but from my toolbox. It was a dissonant chord, a sound that felt thin, like it was vibrating from somewhere much, much farther away than the metal drawer. When I opened it, the sound stopped. The brass grommet sat there, inert. I should have thrown it into the scrap melt. I didn't. I took it home. In my small apartment, the strange occurrences intensified. My digital alarm clock would display symbols that weren't numbers. The reflection in my microwave door would sometimes be a half-second behind my movement, or show a room slightly different from my own, a chair where there was none, a shadow standing where I wasn't, and it was always centered on the grommet. I'd left it on my kitchen counter. I found myself drawn to it, turning it over in my hands. The cold never faded. I started dreaming, not dreams but visions. Endless, non-Euclidean landscapes of pulsating brass, where geometries folded in on themselves, and a vast, silent pressure watched from angles that shouldn't exist. I started calling it the Brombet, a stupid name for a terrifying thing. The horror wasn't in jump scares. It was in the slow unraveling of reality. One night, I woke up needing water. I walked to the kitchen, past the Brombet on the counter. I drank, turned, and saw a path from the counter to my bedroom door. Not a physical path, but a trail. The air along it was slightly warped, like heat haze off asphalt, and it shimmered with that same brassy tint. It was as if the Brombet was leaking its essence into my world, staining the space around it. The next day at the factory, I was a ghost. I couldn't focus. The massive presses no longer looked like machines, but like crude, worshipful idols to some industrial god. And in the roar of the stamping, I heard the dissonant hum of the Brombet, woven into the cacophony. That's when I saw the first one. Out of the corner of my eye, in the long alley between two storage racks, a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and its outline wavered like a mirage. It was made of shifting, reflective brass, its limbs jointed at all the wrong places. It had no face, just a smooth, curved surface where a head should be, reflecting the factory lights in distorted, impossible patterns. It was watching me. I ran, not out of the factory. Where would I go? The Brombet was at my home. I ran to the locker room, heart hammering. In the mirror, my eyes were bloodshot, and behind my own reflection, just for a flash, I saw that brass figure standing behind me, its smooth head tilted. It was learning my shape. I knew then the Brombet wasn't an object. It was an eye, a puncture, a tiny grommet reinforcing a hole that had been torn between my reality and theirs. And I was the loose fabric around that hole. I was being pulled through. I drove home in a panic. I had to get rid of it, throw it in the river, launch it into space. I didn't care. I burst into my apartment. The Brombet was gone from the counter. A cold terror, deeper than the grommet's chill, seized me. I searched frantically, not in the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom. The air felt thick, heavy with that brassy haze. The light from the street lamp outside cast long nu-coude shadows that didn't match the furniture. I found it in the last place I looked, my own hand. I was standing in the bathroom, staring into the mirror. My right hand was clenched in a fist. I didn't remember making it. Slowly, with a will that felt like lifting a car, I forced my fingers to uncurl. There it was, the Brombet. It wasn't in my palm. My flesh had grown around it. The brassy metal was nestled in a perfect seamless depression in the center of my hand, as if it had always been there. The skin around it was pale, traced with faint coppery veins. I could feel it, not as something held, but as a new cold organ, a socket. I tried to pry it out with my other hand. Pain, white hot and electric, shot up my arm. The warped air in the room solidified. The brass figure from the factory was now in the doorway of my bathroom, its smooth head filling the frame. It wasn't alone. Behind it, in the distorted hallway, others shimmered into view, their forms reflecting the panic on my face back at me in grotesque funhouse mirrors. They didn't move toward me. They just watched, waiting. The understanding crashed over me with the weight of a black hole. You don't get rid of a grommet. It's not a thing you discard. A grommet's purpose is to stay, to reinforce, to be the strong point in the fabric where pressure is applied. I am the fabric. The Brombet is here to stay, to reinforce the hole it made. And through that hole, in my hand, their world is slowly, patiently, pressing in. The diagnostics on the Hydra press are still unfinished. My boss has called 12 times. I can't answer. I'm sitting in my living room, in the brass warped air. I can see the world outside my window, but it looks flat now, like a painting. A faint metallic taste coats my tongue, and a low hum vibrates in my bones. The same dissonant chord from the toolbox. It's coming from me, from the Brombet, now a permanent part of my anatomy. A tiny cold hole in the world, anchored in my flesh, and from the corner of my eye, the tall, slender watchers in the hallway are getting clearer every second. They're not coming for me. They're waiting for me to finish coming to them.